Good noon to all of you. Myself Anjali Rathod, Season 3, Presentation Day 2. I am going to present on the topic The Art of Rebellion, Meena Kandasamy's Dalit Voice in Literature. It's my personal information. Table of Contents, Introduction of Author, Dalit Literature, The Angry Dalit Voice, Identity and Resistance, and Articulations of the Voice of the Marginalized, and Conclusion. Introduction. Ilavenil Meena Kandasamy, born in 1984 to Tamil parents, both university professors, is based in Chennai. Her first book, Touch, was published in 2006. Meena Kandasamy is an Indian poet, fiction writer, and activist known for her powerful and thought-provoking works that addresses issues such as caste, feminism, and social injustice. She was gained recognition with her debut poetry collection, Torch, which was published in 2006. Two of her poems have won prizes in All India Poetry competitions. Her poetry has been published in various journals, including Little Magazine, Kavya Bharati, Indian Horizons, Muse India, and the Quarterly Literary Review, Singapore. Meena Kandasamy wrote a biography of Ayankali, Kerala's foremost Dalit revolutionary in collaboration with Amnisa. Her second volume of poetry was published in 2010, MS Militancy. Her novels The Gypsy Goddess, When I Hit You, Exquisite Cadavers. In addition to her literary pursuits, Kandasamy is also a prominent voice in advocating for women's rights and social justice. She has been vocal about issues related to caste discriminations, gender inequality, and domestic violence. Kandasamy's activism often informs her writing, making her work socially relevant and impactful. Dalit literature, a historical context, the world reveals, but these writers from marginalized and despite groups are often shocking. Zeliot recently heard a reading by a young man from a pickpocket caste, which described the inevitable life of crime of that group in touching and frightening vignettes. Many of the writers have received criticism from within their castes or tribes for revealing less than respectable factors of group life. The new writers from this group tend to write autobiography rather than poetry, and title has been translated into English. It is clear, however, that the genre of autobiography reveals political and social awareness. An individual story becomes significant in the explorations of group identity. Dalit literature refers to literary works created by authors belonging to the Dalit community in India. Dalit historically oppressed and marginalized due to the caste system have used literature as a tool to their express their experiences, challenges, and aspirations. Dalit literature specially addresses to the social, economic, and political issues faced by Dalits, highlighting their struggles and discriminations, untouchability, and social injustice. The other new directions of Dalit literature are best illustrated with poetry and comments on the current activities of the older writers. Uh, this essay, however, we will use poems by four of the Dalit women writers to illustrate what we think are the contributions women have made to the field of Dalit literature. First, The identifications of Dalit women with all women based ex- exemplified by Hira Bensort's poem Slave. As Christian Novak's article indicated, there is a divide between caste women and Dalit women that can't be bridged by organizations. Historical background of Dalit literature in India. The roots of Dalit literature can be tracked back to the mid 20th century, paralleling the social and political movement for Dalit rights and social equality. Uh, During this period, writers like Obama, Daya Power, Om Prakash Valmiki, and others began to document the experiences of Dalits in India. These writers challenged traditional literary norms and highlighted the harsh realities faced by Dalits in their writings. Meena Kandasamy, the angry Dalit voice. Dalit Meena Kandasamy is the angry Dalit voice. The Dalit literature is based on Dalit consciousness and it represents the harsh lived experience of marginalized Dalit people. There is always one or the other real character behind a fictional name and the depiction of solid reality behind the thin veil of fictionalized incidents in almost all the genres of Dalit literature. Dalit literature specifically addresses the uh, social, social, economic, and political issues faced by Dalits and highlighting their struggles against discrimination, untouchability, and social injustice. It often reflects the Dalit perspective, providing a unique insight into their lives and asserting their identity and agency. Dalit literature is basically a literature of resistance, as in the mainstream literary canon. It is necessary to be a woman to represent the experiences of women. It is also necessary to have women writers in other marginalized classes. Dalit male writers are facing occasions accusations of not providing Dalit women writers their due place. Dalit male writers do not take serious note of the literary output of Dalit women and tend to be dismissive of it. Continue with this. Meena Kandasamy acknowledges in one of her interviews that she chose poetry consciously because it deals with language, and language is the site of subjugation and oppression. It is poetry which has the power to challenge the oppression of language and its inequalities. Kandasamy offers her resistance through language and see consciousness of her being a Dalit and a feminist. Kandasamy think that writing in English has a power to reach the corridors of power and gain a wider audience. She dreams of an English which is free of white man's sway from the control of elite society. Dalits in India have been much inspired by the Black American movements. The example may be given that of the Dalit Panther movement, which was launched in Maharashtra under the direct influence of the American Black Panthers movement. Both the communities were of course marginalized and to some extent equally victimed. Kandasamy tries to show the temperamental differences between the two. Meena Kandasamy is indeed a prominent and influential voice in contemporary Indian literature, known for her fierce advocacy against social injustice and her unapologetic exploration of Dalit identity, while she is widely recognized for her strong stance on issues related to caste discriminations, feminism, and human rights. It is important to note that she doesn't exclusively identify as a Dalit writer. Dalit identity and resistance. The word Dalit in Marathi means crushed, broken down, and reduced to pieces. The post colonial term subaltern suits the Dalits of India because they remain subordinate to the privileged sections of the society since time immemorial. The subaltern voice is heard today in spite of its interior status in every walk of life. The Black Panthers of America paved the way for the depressed classes of India to begin the Dalit Panther movement to challenge the caste hierarchy in our country. Dalit consciousness now speaks out its emotions and anguish. Dalit identity and resistance are closely intertwined aspects of the social and political landscape in India. Dalit historically marginalized and oppressed due to the caste system have faced centuries of discriminations, untouchability, and social exclusion. In recent decades, communities have mobilized, asserting their identity and engaging in various forms of resistance against the enraged inequalities they face. It expresses its dissent on the existing social injustice and discriminations on the basis of caste, creed, color, and community. uh, Dalit identity and historical roots in caste systems or cultural heritage. In caste system, Dalits are considered the lowest in the Hindu caste hierarchy, traditionally really relegated to the menial and degrading task. They have been socially segregated and discriminated against for generations. Dalit literature portrays the stark reality of the plight of the oppressed in India, class under the Indian caste system. Dalit literature forms a distinct part of Indian literature. The voice of the Dalit is heard the prominently after 1960 in the form of poems, short stories, and autobiographies in almost all important languages. He Dalit identity and resident in historical oppression, centuries of discriminations. We bear the weight of centuries of discriminations, untouchability, and social segregation. Our ancestors endured humiliations, violence, and exclusion society based on their birth in a particular caste. In articulation of the voice of the marginalized, Kandasamy expresses her anger against caste and against caste-based discriminations, which has crippled the Dalits marginalized to dehumanized state as they are subjected to humiliations and oppressions. In other words, her works focus on poverty, oppression, injustice, caste annihilation, linguistic identity, and pangs and predicaments of women. Casteism is an old social evil which is used to subjugate the lower stratum of the hierarchical social structure of Indian society and to uphold discriminations as well as gain unfair advantage over the others marginalized groups of India such as Dalits or untouchables, Adivasis, and nomadic tribes were made to lead dehumanized and degraded lives. An individual identity is determined by caste and not by karma. The marginalized groups of India, such as Dalits, untouchables, Adivasis, and nomadic tribes, were made to lead dehumanized, degraded lives. After the whole discussion, last conclusion, Meena Kandasamy champions the cause of the marginalized and pleads for their liberty, equality, and fraternity and justice, so that they can live with honor and dignity. Meena Kandasamy's works shares the discourse of modernity which addresses issues concerning contemporary society and its conditions. Dalit realized that education combined with experience can create wonders in the lives of people by making people realize that empowerment comes only where there is enlightenment and unity. There are reference. If you have any question, then ask.
Anjali, my question is that what are your views on Kandasamy choosing to write exclusively about caste discrimination when she could have also addressed religion-based discrimination?
Meena Kandasamy choosing to write exclusively about caste discrimination. So author have their own chooses to write their own focus. The caste discriminations is a impact of a person, and see we we can't say that see specific or felt passion that by concentrating one issue, she made as an about caste discrimination.
Anjali, as your presentation has the heading of the art of rebellion, Meena Kandasyami's Dalit voice in literature, what are your views on the contemporary time? Is this voice is really being heard?
Yes, yes, the art of rebellion, Meena Kandasamy's Dalit voice in literature, in contemporary time, it extent of its awareness about caste discriminations and untouchability, uh, and Dalit issues has increased, but challenges still exist in executing in caste discrimination of the art of rebellion in Dalit voice in literature.